Of course, the first one we're going to be talking about was our Patreon request this week. Thank you, Loveskin, for requesting Perfect Blue, a 1997 psychological thriller film.
I can go ahead and talk about Perfect Blue.
Why would you talk about it? Oh, wait, yeah, no, I picked a movie last week. Never mind, you talk about it.
I feel like there's a pretty decent reason as to why I'll talk about it. So, Perfect Blue, guys. Perfect Blue. Let me just real quick pull up the names of the characters here real quick because I don't remember them. I'm really bad with names. So Perfect Blue is a film all about Mima, okay? Mima, she's a pop star, right? She's an idol, but she doesn't want to really be an idol anymore, or at least her producer doesn't want her to be, so she's going to become an actress. And so, over the course of the film, we see as Mima is slowly getting not so great things happening to her via a stalker who she has, who's slowly causing her to kind of question her place in the world, as well as just like, what the fuck is even happening to her at this point? As it goes, it's a psychological thriller, and because of that, things get a little fucking wacky pretty quickly throughout this movie, in which we can't really tell what the fuck is happening a lot of the time, okay? And over the course of the movie, us along with Mima are kind of just like questioning what is actually going on in her life at this point. We see her get like raped on set and stuff like that, you know, just the casual things that happen on a film set, as well as a bunch of murders going on around her, affecting the people in her life. And we don't know if it's Mima who's doing it, or if it's some other crazy dude, like her stalker, for example. But as we come to find out, one of her producers, fucking Rumi or whatever the fuck her name is actually the murderer here, and she wants to take over Mima's life. And over the course of the film, beyond that, we just see her get chased down. She fucking gets slammed through a fucking truck or whatever, and then Rumi ends up in a hospital, and Mima leaves. That's about it. That's the movie. This is a really fucking difficult film to actually try and break down a proper synopsis for.
Yeah, that's what I was walking out of this movie with, where I was like, I really hope going into this conversation with you guys that this movie is left super in the air for interpretation, because I had a couple ideas of how this whole thing worked. Like, yeah, at first I did think it was a stalker going around killing all these people, because he's like, oh, well, maybe if I start killing all, like, this photographer and, like, the producers and the screenwriter, maybe she'll go back to being a pop star. But then it was just, like, it started turning into, like, they started paralleling the show in the movie to the actual movie itself, where they're like, oh, well, illusions can't kill people, but wait, if the illusion, like, just, I don't know what they projected illusion onto somebody else or whatever, then that person does whatever the illusion wants or whatever. I don't know if Rumi, from my perspective, was the murderer the entire time, but given the fact that we saw her as Mima at the end, and because I was pretty sure the photographer guy who got murdered, ordering that pizza, I was so sure that it was Mima doing the deed, but obviously, you know, like I had said, Rumi thinking she was Mima, maybe that was part of the psychological horror.
I mean, I absolutely believe that was Rumi who ended up doing it. The film likes to play with you an awful lot, much like how it does to our main character here, Mima herself, where we don't even know what the fuck is happening, okay? But I do think that it's pretty clear at the end of the day that it was Rumi who ended up doing that shit. I think that for the most part, she was the person who murdered everyone, except for at like the very beginning of the film, we have like those guys fucking throwing cans or whatever at Mima throughout it, and we later see like in the elevator there's like a poster where it's like, oh, one of those guys is fucking dead now. I'm pretty sure that the stalker guy murdered that guy, but the rest of the murders were all fucking Rumi.
Yeah, well, what do you think about the last murder, I guess, like the producer and the stalker? Do you think that was also Rumi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she was tying up loose ends, as she said.
Exactly.
I figured. I think one of the biggest appreciations about this movie is how ambiguous it is, and the fact that like you had been explaining in the synopsis of the movie, how alongside confusion we were with Mima, like, we don't know what's going on, we don't know what's real, is she waking up, is this a dream, did this actually happen, you know, this, that, and the other thing. One other thing I'd like to draw attention to about this movie is, for it being a 1998 movie, I was shocked by the amount of animation detail they put into the actual performances of, like, them moving on stage. I thought that was way too, I don't know if way too fluid is a way to say it, but I thought that when they were on stage, it was very well animated. I don't know if I am the only one that stands on that.
I mean, yeah, just this film in general, I think, has pretty solid animation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it stands the test of time pretty well. Especially, it really has that, like, old 90s anime vibe to it, where they have the, there's, like, a technique that's, like, the name of it. It's, like, a light box or something, where they literally put, like, cutouts of shit on, like, a light box and then film it. I'm pretty sure that's how they were doing this movie. Could be wrong. I don't know. But it has that aesthetic, and I think it's cool.
Yeah, I love that fucking 90s anime aesthetic. Now, for me, this is the second time I've seen this film, and I definitely think that this film benefits a shitload from a second watch, because the first time I watched through it, I'll set the scene here for you, okay? I'll set the scene a little bit. So, I had recently watched an episode of Trash Taste, okay? And they were talking about how great the works of Satoshi Kon are. That was the director for this film here. And they had particularly mentioned Perfect Blue, how Perfect Blue is an amazing film. You gotta go watch it if you're an anime enjoyer. And so I was like, oh, I'll keep that one in mind. And then, a few weeks later, I ended up having a girl come over, okay? And she was talking about how way into anime she is. And I thought, oh, you're into anime, you say? Well, I know of a great film that we can check out. Thinking that I could, like, flex my great taste of anime onto her. And we watched Perfect Blue. And oh boy, was that a fucking mistake.
I can
imagine. The rape scenes were absurdly awkward in this movie.
Did you, like, tell her, like, okay, I'm so fucking sorry, I had no idea.
I said nothing.
You said nothing?
I think saying nothing was probably the wrong choice.
Was she cool with it in the end?
Yeah, she at the end of the day, she was like, yeah, it was a good movie. So at least we had that. But going back and watching it a second time, I definitely feel as though I was able to follow along with the plot a substantially better amount here. Like,
that makes sense.
There was basically nothing about this that really, like, confused me. I was able to, piece together, okay, like, this is fucking Mima doing this shit, this is Rumi doing this other shit to fuck with her and all that stuff, Like, it made a lot more sense to me overall this time. However, I will say, actually, the first time I watched this movie, it was in the English dub, okay? This time I watched it subbed, which I think, the sub, they did a really solid job on it. However, I do think that there is one part where the sub kind of falters a little bit. And it's at the very, very end of the film. It's literally the last line. When she says, Mima looks into the mirror and she's like, yeah, I'm the real deal, or whatever the fuck she says there. Mm-hmm. That's actually Rumi who's saying that. That's not Mima's voice, which I think is really difficult to tell in the original Japanese. Whereas, just because we don't fucking speak the language, okay? Whereas in the English, it's much easier to see it like, oh, what does that mean?
Oh.
I hate that ending. I prefer it this way.
Okay. I didn't think of it that way. I didn't hear Rumi's voice, to be completely honest. I did think it was a little suspicious when she looked in the mirror and said that. I was like, that doesn't seem quite right. Yeah, I did not catch that, unfortunately. Good to know, I guess.
I'm gonna pretend that's not the case, because that's a bad ending, and that would actually make me significantly downgrade my rank.
Yeah, that also makes less sense than the ending I'm imagining.
Well, yeah, of course. What does that mean? What does it mean by her saying that? Who knows?
Exactly, that's stupid. It's the end of the movie. Give us closure to the story, you stupid fuck.
You want closure for a movie like this? Not a fucking chance, Buster.
You got anything in particular?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Nika. This is the second time I watched this movie, too. I also watched this with the girl for the first time, not knowing what the fuck it was. We both did not pull the straw very well, unfortunately, with this movie. Both were very awkward experiences. She was also chill with it, though. She also thought it was good, I guess. But, yeah, no, this movie's sick. I think the animation's really good. The story is definitely much easier to follow along with the second viewing. The first viewing, I was definitely confused as shit. I think the pacing is pretty solid. I think it really does a good job ramping up tension as she just, keeps going, crazier and crazier with the confusion of all that's happening. And I think the ending is really well done as well. I just really like this movie. I think it's really solid.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. To say. Yeah, I mean, just the general themes and shit like that, where it's dealing with a fucking not knowing what version of you is real, whether or not it's this version that you're presenting to people and shit like that, where it's I mean, this is the one that they're constantly seeing and shit like that. This is the one that they believe is real. So is that the real version of me, or is it this other one that I have built up in my head? Who am I? Who am I?
You got anything in particular to say, Tanner?
I thought it was a pretty solid psychological thriller.
I will say one minor gripe. I did not like the way Rumi was animated. She gave me Hammerhead Shark vibes.
I mean, yeah, I feel that's a big thing with this movie, is that, a lot of the characters are not very attractive looking whatsoever. Outside of, the ones who, fucking these TV people and, these idols and shit like that, outside of them who, they're supposed to be attractive, the rest of the characters are pretty ugly or, kind of normal looking generally, which I think, just, adds a lot more to it. Because, oh, yeah, of course, these are the people who are being, admired and shit like that. Look at how beautiful they are.
Also, let me lay down some some lore maybe about this movie. Obviously, this is all, still hypothetical. But in the the Japanese idol industry, you kind of just have to be hot if you want to be an idol. And I think it's pretty safe to assume that Rumi probably wanted to be an idol at some point, figuring that she's trying to like steal the identity of an idol.
I think that they actually do have like a
Shut
pretty,
the fuck up, Nico!
Hey,
I'm
Jax, I want to
talking.
explain upon what you said a little bit more. They do have like a little throwaway line at one point where the male producer, he says something along the lines of like, being an idol sure is tough. You know that better than anyone, don't you? And she's like, don't remind me. It's something along those lines that definitely heavily hints towards her previously trying to be an idol and just like not succeeding.
Yeah, so basically, you could take that information and assume that what's happening with Rumi is just she wanted to be an idol at some point. Obviously, she couldn't do it because she doesn't have the looks. And then she meets Mima, who is basically like the perfect embodiment of what she wants to be. She's attractive, she's funny, she's good at acting, dancing, all this stuff. She's basically like the perfect being in Rumi's eyes, and she has very close contact with her. And because of, her own insecurities and because of having this like shining example of who she wants to be, that is like a, you could assume is a big reason as to why she went under this like psychosis and started having these, delusions of thinking that she is this person, and why she wanted to, replace Mima after she realized that Mima isn't the person that she thought she was initially, when she started doing the more like adult stuff and stopped being an idol, because like who she thought was Mima is no longer who she thinks she is, right? And she thinks she's like the true Mima. So yeah, I think this movie does a really good job exploring its themes and all that stuff. Big fan.
Yeah, and I'd say that, like, generally, like, the confusing parts as well, like, you can pretty easily, like, figure out, okay, what is actually happening in all these situations, generally, except for one I found, where I still don't totally know what I'm supposed to take away from it. So during, I believe it's like the fucking nude photo shoot is going on, okay? There's this like other footage just being interspliced with it, where it's like the two girls from Champ or whatever, like dancing and singing on stage. But then like during that performance, we see fucking like, the visage of Mima show up as well, like still in her idol outfit or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And like, there is like an actual reaction that like the other Champ members and like the audience and shit have when like that shows up. As well as, like, the fucking stalker dude who's, like, recording it. He, like, gives a big smile when that happens. What is happening there exactly? Is that fucking Rumi showing up on stage or something? I don't understand that part exactly.
Well, and later on in the movie, you also see whatever, like, the visage of, like, I don't know what the fuck to call her, Neo Rumi, in the room with the stalker guy, in her little shtick. So maybe he's like also kind of like part of it, he sees her as like the new Rumi as well, because she was the one writing those articles. He sees the person writing the articles as Mima, so he sees Rumi as like the new Neo Mima or something. I don't fucking know. Maybe it was Mima literally hopping on, or not Mima, Rumi hopping on stage. I'm getting their names confused. And dancing, and everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? Stalker's like, hell yeah, that's her. That's my girl. I don't know. Pretty silly.
I personally interpreted that scene as the delusions of a stalker. It's his preferred reality in that moment, and him, like the crowd reacting as his visual projection on the scenario. That's how I interpreted it.
But like they're not also excited about it. They're just kind of like, oh, what's happening right now?
I don't know, man. Delusions of a stalker.
Fair enough. I really like this movie. I'm gonna give it an A.
There we go.
I like this movie too, but we talked about it too long. A minus.
Ooh.
I gave it an A+. 10 or high. Anyways, Dylan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm with Tanner on this one. I also gave this movie an A-.
Crazy.
Whoa, and that puts it at A.
Whoa.
Well deserved.
Yep,
Good movie.
pretty
Good movie.
solid movie overall.